Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The steady rhythm of Jack Maddox's sanding filled the workshop. His movements were methodical, almost mechanical, as he ran the paper over the oak's surface in smooth, even strokes. Sweat trickled down his temple, but he didn't pause to wipe it away. The large dining table was taking shape beneath his hands, another piece that would outlast its maker. Just like his father's work had outlasted him. Sawdust hung in the air, catching the late afternoon sunlight that streamed through the high windows of the converted barn. The scent of wood and varnish permeated everything: his clothes, his skin, his very being. It was the smell of honesty, of things that couldn't pretend to be something they weren't. The rumble of a motorcycle engine broke through his concentration. Jack didn't look up as the door swung open and heavy boots stomped across the concrete floor. "World's angriest Buddha at work again, I see." Jace's voice carried across the workshop that Jack's hands didn't falter in their rhythm. "Table needs to be done by next week." Jace approached, running a calloused hand over the edge of the oak. "Carter order?" "Yeah." Jack finally straightened, his back protesting after hours bent over the wood. He was 38, but felt a decade older these days. Anniversary present. Nice to see some people's marriages work out. Jace pulled up a stool, his dark eyes studying Jack's face. "Heard anything?" Jack set down the sandpaper and reached for a water bottle. "She filed for another delay on the hearing." "Christ." Jace shook his head. "It's been what, 10 months? How many delays is that now?" "3. Jack's voice was flat, emotionless. "Her lawyer says she's gathering more financial information." "You mean she's trying to find more ways to bleed you dry?" Jace ran a hand through his dark hair. "What more does she want?" "She already took half your savings." Jack wiped his hands on a rag. "Technically, it was our joint account." "Yeah, and technically, she was supposed to be faithful in your 8-year marriage, but that didn't stop her from screwing half of Greenville, did it?" Jack's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The betrayals had stopped hurting months ago. Now, there was just a hollow space where something else used to be. "Sorry, man." Jace sighed. "I know you don't need the reminder. It's fine." Jack reached for a different grid of sandpaper. "Water under the bridge. Water under the bridge." Jace snorted. "She emptied your accounts, slept with multiple men, tried to turn your family against you, and is still dragging out this divorce to squeeze every penny she can. That's not water, Jack. That's sewage." Jack finally looked up, his blue eyes hard. "What do you want me to do, Jace? Scream? Break things? That won't change anything." "No, but might make you feel human again." Jace stood up, pacing the workshop. "You've been like this stone statue since you found those texts on her phone. It's like you shut down." "I'm focused." Jack returned to sanding, his strokes perhaps a bit harder than necessary. "On what?" "Revenge." A slight smile curved Jack's lips. "On getting free. Cleanly." Jace laughed, but there was little humor in it. "Nothing clean about divorce, buddy. Especially not with someone like Delaney. She's a piranha in designer clothes." Jack didn't argue. He'd seen firsthand how his wife had transformed over the years. From the warm, lively barista who'd been impressed by his work ethic and craft, to the cold, status-hungry woman who saw his family business as quaint and limiting. The woman who'd siphoned money from their accounts and transferred it to her mother under the guise of family help. The woman who smiled to his face while undermining him to his clients and family. "She can have the money," Jack said finally. "I just want her name off my business." "And you think she'll let that happen without a fight?" Jace shook his head. "You built something solid here, Jack. This place is worth something, and Delaney knows it. She wants her cut." Jack ran his hand over the oak, feeling the grain beneath his fingertips. "Some things aren't for sale. Tell that to her lawyer." Jace checked his watch. "Listen, a few of us are grabbing drinks at Miller's. You should come." "Can't. Need to finish this section before I quit for the day. Work will be here tomorrow, Jack. So will the divorce." Jack picked up his tools again. "One thing at a time." Jace sighed in defeat. "All right, Buddha. Keep meditating over your wood. But my offer stands if you change your mind." Jack nodded, already back in his rhythm, as Jace headed for the door. Just before leaving, his friend paused. "Jack." "Yeah, she doesn't get to take this from you, too. Your life." You're right to have one outside this shop. Jack looked up, meeting Jace's concerned gaze. I know. Do you? Jace asked. Because from where I'm standing, she's winning if you're just existing. After Jace left, the silence descended again, broken only by the sound of sandpaper on wood and Jack's steady breathing. He worked until darkness fell, until his arms ached and his eyes burned. Only then did he put down his tools and lock up the workshop. The house felt too big now, too empty, even though he'd grown up here and lived alone for years before meeting Delaney. Her traces were long gone: clothes, decorations, the expensive wine glasses she'd insisted they needed. But somehow, her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. Morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen curtains as Jack sipped his black coffee. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, a sound that had comforted him since childhood. His mother had always insisted on real clocks, not digital ones. Some things shouldn't be rushed, she'd say. The knock at the back door came right on schedule. Tess Maddox never arrived early or late. She simply appeared when she was meant to. Doors open, Jack called. Tess entered with the confidence of a woman who knew her place in the world. At 61, she carried herself with the straight-back posture of the nurse she'd been for 30 years. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her sharp eyes missed nothing as she surveyed her son. You didn't sleep, she said, setting down a container on the counter. Tea wasn't a question, so Jack didn't bother denying it. Finished the Carter table. Good. She opened the container, revealing freshly baked biscuits. Eat something. Jack took one to appease her, though he had little appetite these days. You don't need to keep feeding me, Mom. And you don't need to keep telling me what I need to do. She fixed herself a cup of coffee and sat across from him. Heard about the delay. Jack's jaw tightened. News travels fast. It's Greenville. We're practically telepathic. Tess studied him over the rim of her mug. What's her angle this time? Who knows? More money, probably. She always did have expensive taste. Tess's voice held no judgment, just observation. Remember when she redid your kitchen? $6,000 for countertops. Jack remembered. The fight that had followed when he'd questioned the expense had been their first major one. Delaney's tears, her insistence that he didn't understand how important appearances were, how people judged their success by such things. She was different at the beginning, he said quietly. Tess considered this. Was she? Or was she just better at hiding who she really was? The memory surfaced unbidden. Delaney in the coffee shop where they'd met, laugh lines crinkling around her eyes as she teased him about ordering the same black coffee every morning at exactly 7:15. Would it kill you to try something new? She'd asked, sliding a different cup across the counter. On the house. If you hate it, you never have to see me again. He hadn't hated it. And for 2 years after they married, he hadn't hated anything about their life together. Delaney had been warm, supportive, excited about his craft. She'd sit in his workshop for hours, watching him work, asking questions about different woods and techniques, but then came the slow transformation. The invitations to parties with people who had more money than sense. The complaints about the house's family home for 3 generations being too rustic. The hints that he could make more money if he mass-produced his designs instead of creating custom pieces. What happened to that girl who loved my work? He'd asked once, during a particularly heated argument. Her laugh had been brittle. She grew up and realized that craftsmanship doesn't pay the bills like she thought it would. The memory dissolved as Tess spoke again. She came by the hospital before I retired. Did I ever tell you that? Jack looked up, surprised. No. When? About 2 years ago. Brought flowers, told the nurses what a wonderful mother-in-law I was. Tess's lips thinned. All for show, of course. She wanted me to convince you to take out a loan for that spa retreat she wanted to open. You never mentioned it. Because I knew you'd say no, and she'd blame me for poisoning you against her idea. Tess took another sip of coffee. She was always playing angles, Jack. Always looking for leverage. Jack nodded slowly. His mother had seen through Delaney from the beginning, though she'd kept her counsel until asked. Even then, she'd been measured in her criticism, allowing him to make his own decisions. I should have listened to you, he admitted. You loved her, Tess said simply. Love makes fools of the wisest people. Not anymore. His voice hardened. I'm done being a fool. Tess reached across the table and squeezed his hand, a rare physical gesture from a woman who normally expressed affection through food and practical help. Good, because I think she's planning something. Jack's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Jenny called yesterday. Said Delaney showed up at Madison's birthday party. What? Jack set down his coffee mug with too much force, liquid sloshing over the rim. She wasn't invited. Of course not. But she brought a gift and acted like everything was normal. Hugged everyone, asked about the family business, told stories about when you two were together. Tessa's expression darkened. Classic Delaney performance. Anger flashed through Jack, brief but intense. Madison was his niece. She was 10. She shouldn't be dragged into this mess. What did Jenny do? What could she do? Make a scene at her daughter's party. Tess shook her head. She let play out, then called me after. Jack ran a hand over his face, feeling the stubble he hadn't bothered to shave. Why would Delaney do that? The family made it clear whose side they were on months ago. That's what concerns me. Tess leaned forward, her gaze intent. She's setting something up. Right before she left, she whispered to me that she's got news for court. Like she wanted me to tell you. The pit of Jack's stomach tightened. Delaney never did anything without purpose. If she was trying to get a message to him, it was part of a larger strategy. Did she say what kind of news? No, but she looked. Tess paused, searching for the right word. Triumphant, like she won a prize. Jack stood, carrying his mug to the sink. His mind was already racing through possibilities, none of them good. Whatever she's planning, I'll handle it. I know you will. Tess began gathering her things. Just don't underestimate her, Jack. A cornered animal is always the most dangerous. He nodded, gazing out the window at his workshop. I won't. After Tess left, Jack returned to his work, but his mind kept circling back to Delaney's words. News for court. What could she possibly have that would change the momentum of the proceedings? They had no children, their assets were well documented, and the infidelity was established fact. What was left to leverage? By evening, the uneasiness had settled into his bones like a deep ache. He found himself digging through old papers in his office, reviewing financial records, text messages, emails, anything that might give him a clue about what Delaney was planning. Nothing stood out. But the feeling that something was coming, something he wasn't prepared for, wouldn't leave him. It followed him into restless sleep, where he dreamed of Delaney smiling at him across a vast table, sliding a cup across the surface. Drink it, she said in the dream. If you hate it, you never have to see me again. But when he looked down, the cup was empty. 3 days later, Jack was finishing up client paperwork when his phone buzzed. The text was from Jenny, his sister-in-law. Did you know Delaney's trying to friend Madison on TikTok? Jack stared at the message, his jaw clenching. First the birthday party, now this. He texted back quickly, block her. I'll handle it. The reply came almost instantly. Already done. This is getting weird, Jack. What does she want? I don't know. But I'll find out. Jack set down his phone and leaned back in his chair, a cold anger settling in his chest. Using a child to get to him was a new low, even for Delaney. Madison was an innocent in all this, a little girl who'd been confused and hurt when her aunt had suddenly disappeared from family gatherings. His cell rang, and he answered without checking the ID. Yeah, Jack, it's Marla. He straightened in surprise. Marla Ayers had been Delaney's best friend for years. They hadn't spoken since the separation. What do you want? To warn you. Her voice was tight, strained. Delaney's on the warpath. She's telling everyone who'll listen that you're trying to cheat her out of what she deserves. That's nothing new. Jack kept his tone neutral, though his grip on the phone tightened. She's been saying that for months. This is different. Marla hesitated. She says she has something that's going to change everything at the hearing. Something that'll force you to settle on her terms. The same uneasy feeling that had plagued him since Tess's visit intensified. Did she tell you what it is? Another pause. Not exactly, but she's been acting strange. Triumphant 1 minute, terrified the next. Whatever she's planning, I don't think it's fully thought through. Why are you telling me this, Marla? You've been in her corner from the beginning. Because I know what really happened with you two. Her voice dropped. I know she was the one who cheated first, who lied about everything. And now she's dragging a child into it. What child? Jack interrupted, his pulse quickening. What are you talking about? Madison. Trying to contact her online. It's crossing a line and No. You said dragging a child into it. Those were your exact words. There was silence on the other end, then a soft curse. I've said too much already. Just be prepared, Jack. That's all I can say. The line went dead. Jack sat motionless, the phone still pressed to his ear as his mind raced. A child. Could Delaney be claiming? No, it wasn't possible. They hadn't been intimate for months before the separation. There was no way. But if not that, then what? His stomach churned. The court date was in 3 days. Whatever Delaney was planning, it would happen then. He needed to be ready. Jack unlocked a drawer in his desk and pulled out a worn leather journal, his father's old business log that he'd repurposed. Inside were carefully documented dates, times, and events from the past year. Every interaction with Delaney, every suspicious withdrawal from their accounts, every text message with conflicting stories. A meticulous record of a marriage's dissolution. He flipped to a blank page and added today's date, followed by notes about Ginny's text and Marla's call. Then he sat back, staring at the wall of his office. If Delaney wanted to play games, he would be ready. But he wouldn't play by her rules. The next morning, Jack drove to the bank and requested complete records of all transactions from their joint accounts for the past year. Then he visited his lawyer, Calvin Reese, a gray-haired man with tired eyes and a reputation for thoroughness rather than flair. I think Delaney's planning something for the hearing, Jack explained, sliding the journal across the desk. Something about a child. Calvin's eyebrows rose as he flipped through the pages. You think she's claiming pregnancy? After all this time? I don't know. But whatever it is, it won't be the truth. Truth is subjective in family court, Jack. You know that by now. Calvin adjusted his glasses. What we need is evidence. Hard facts that can't be disputed. Jack nodded. That's why I'm here. They spent the next hour reviewing the journal, with Jack explaining each entry in detail. Calvin took notes, occasionally asking for clarification or suggesting additional documentation they might need. If she does claim pregnancy, Calvin said finally, we can request a paternity test. But that takes time, and in the interim, the judge might rule in her favor on temporary support. Family court tends to err on the side of caution when there's a potential child involved. So we need to prove it's not possible. Exactly. And for that, we need to establish where you were on any date she might claim conception occurred. Calvin tapped his pen against the desk. You said you've been sleeping at your workshop for the past month or so. Yes. Ever since I found out she tried to access my business accounts. Good. And there are security cameras at the workshop? Jack nodded. Motion activated. They record to a cloud server. Perfect. Make sure that footage is backed up and accessible. If she claims recent conception, we can prove you weren't anywhere near her. As Jack left the law office, his phone buzzed with a text from Jace. Bad news. Delaney's been talking to Thompson. He's pulled his dining set order. Jack's jaw tightened. Thompson was one of his biggest clients, a local real estate developer who ordered custom pieces for his model homes. Losing his business would hurt. Before he could respond, another text came through. Also, someone spray-painted "Deadbeat Dad" on the sign outside your workshop. I cleaned it up before anyone saw. What the hell is going on? Jack stared at the message, a cold certainty settling over him. Now he knew what Delaney was planning, and it was exactly as desperate and vicious as he would expect from her. Instead of texting back, he called Jace. I need your help, he said when his friend answered. And I need you to not ask too many questions right now. Done. What do you need? Access to the security footage from my workshop. And I need you to remember exactly where I was on January 12th. January? Jace sounded confused. Why does that matter? Because, Jack said grimly, I think Delaney is about to tell the court she's pregnant with my child. The silence on the other end was brief, but heavy. That's impossible, Jace finally said. You two haven't been together since November 23rd of last year, when I moved out. So she's lying. Big surprise. Jace's voice hardened. What's the plan? Jack took a deep breath, his mind already organizing the steps ahead. The plan is to let her lie, under oath, in front of judge. And then, a grim smile touched Jack's lips. And then we show her what happens when you play games with the wrong person. The courthouse loomed against the bright spring sky, its stone facade imposing and immutable. Jack stood at the bottom of the steps, straightening his tie. He'd chosen his attire, carefully a dark blue suit he'd had long before meeting Delaney. Nothing flashy or expensive. He looked like what he was, a hardworking business owner, not trying to impress anyone. Jace pulled up on his motorcycle, parking it at an angle before joining Jack. Despite the occasion, he hadn't abandoned his usual style black jeans, boots, and a leather jacket over a button-down shirt. "Ready for this?" Jace asked, his gaze scanning the courthouse entrance. "Been ready for months." Jack's voice was steady, his expression neutral. Inside, though, his stomach churned with anticipation. Not anxiety, he was long past that, but the focused tension of someone preparing to spring a trap. They climbed the steps together, passing through security and navigating the halls to courtroom C. Jack's lawyer was already there, arranging papers at the defense table. Calvin Reese nodded in greeting, his expression giving away nothing. "Everything in order?" Jack asked quietly as he took his seat. "All set." Calvin patted a manila folder. "Let's see what happens." They didn't have to wait long. The murmur of conversation in the courtroom died as the doors opened and Delaney entered with her attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Miranda Phelps who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Jack heard Jace's low whistle from the row behind him. "Jesus, she's playing the Hallmark card." It was an apt description. Delaney had always known how to dress for effect, and today was no exception. Her flowing cream-colored dress did nothing to hide the obvious swell of her belly. Her honey-blonde hair fell in soft waves around her face, and she'd opted for minimal makeup that emphasized her natural glow. She looked every inch the radiant mother-to-be. Jack kept his expression perfectly blank as their eyes met across the courtroom. Delaney's lips curved in a small, secret smile, the same one she'd given him countless times before when she thought she had the upper hand. It had once made his heart race. Now it only confirmed what he already knew. "All rise," the bailiff called. The Honorable Judge Odessa Gaines presiding. Judge Gaines entered briskly, her robes flowing around her tall frame. At 55, she had the reputation of being fair but uncompromising, with little patience for theatrics. Her dark eyes swept the courtroom as she took her seat. "Be seated," she said, her voice crisp as she opened the file before her. "We're here for the continuation of divorce proceedings in the matter of Maddox versus Rourke Maddox. I see there have been several delays in this case already." She looked up, her gaze sharp. "I do not appreciate my court's time being wasted, so I hope we can make progress today." Miranda Phelps stood, all polished confidence. "Your Honor, we believe we can. In fact, there have been significant developments that impact the financial considerations of this case." Judge Gaines raised an eyebrow. "Proceed. If it pleases the court, my client would like to make a statement regarding her current condition." The judge gestured for Delaney to stand. She did so with graceful care, one hand resting protectively on her belly. "Mrs. Rourke Maddox, you have something to add to these proceedings." "Yes, Your Honor." Delaney's voice was soft but clear, with just the right tremor of emotion. "I'd like the court to be aware that I'm carrying Jack's child." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Jack remained motionless, his eyes fixed on a point just above the judge's head. Beside him, Calvin scribbled a note on his legal pad. Judge Gaines's expression didn't change. "I see. And how far along are you, Mrs. Rourke Maddox?" "For months, Your Honor." "And when did you inform Mr. Maddox of this pregnancy?" Delaney's eyes glistened with tears that didn't quite fall. I haven't had the opportunity. Jack has refused to speak with me directly since our separation. All communication has been through lawyers." The judge turned her penetrating gaze to Jack. "Mr. Maddox, were you aware of your wife's pregnancy?" Calvin started to rise, but Jack put a hand on his arm. "I'll answer," he said quietly. Then, to the judge, "No, Your Honor. This is the first I'm hearing of it." If Judge Gaines found his lack of reaction noteworthy, she didn't comment on it. "Very well. Ms. Phelps, I assume this development affects your client's requests regarding support and division of assets." "It does, Your Honor." Miranda stepped forward, handing a document to the bailiff. We've prepared an amended petition that takes into account the needs of Mrs. Rourke Maddox and her child. As the bailiff delivered copies to Calvin and the judge, Jack finally looked directly at Delaney. Her face was a perfect mask of vulnerability and hope. But her eyes told a different story. They were calculating, triumphant. She thought she'd won. The corner of Jack's mouth twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Judge Gaines scanned the amended petition, her expression growing more severe with each page. Ms. Phelps, this is quite a significant increase from your original requests. Yes, Your Honor, but given the circumstances. The circumstances being a pregnancy that was not disclosed until this moment, despite multiple hearings. The judge set the papers down. Mrs. Rourke Maddox, when exactly did this pregnancy occur? Given the timeline of your separation, I'm finding the math interesting. Delaney's hand fluttered to her throat in a gesture Jack recognized all too well her tell when she was about to lie with extra conviction. Jack and I had a moment of reconciliation about 2 months after he moved out. In mid-January. I see. Judge Gaines turned to Jack. Mr. Maddox, is this accurate? All eyes in the courtroom shifted to him. This was the moment, the fulcrum upon which everything would turn. Jack met the judge's gaze steadily. No, Your Honor, he said, his voice clear and firm. That never happened. Not once. Not even by accident. A muscle twitched in Judge Gaines's jaw. She looked between the two of them, then made a note on her pad. We appear to have conflicting testimony. Ms. Phelps, can your client provide any evidence of this reconciliation? Miranda leaned over to whisper to Delaney, who nodded and whispered back. The attorney straightened. Your Honor, the evidence of the reconciliation is self-evident. She gestured to Delaney's belly. Mrs. Rourke Maddox is carrying Mr. Maddox's child. That's circular reasoning. Counselor, Judge Gaines said dryly. The pregnancy is the result you're claiming, not evidence of how it occurred. With respect, Your Honor, Calvin interjected. Rising, we contest the claim that Mr. Maddox is the father of this child. Delaney gasped softly, her hand pressing against her heart in a picture of wounded innocence. How could you say that, Jack? Her voice trembled. After everything we've been through. Jack said nothing, his expression unchanged. Your Honor, Miranda said quickly, my client is willing to submit to paternity testing after the birth. But in the meantime, she requires support for her medical needs and preparation for the child. Judge Gaines's brow furrowed. Mr. Reese, what is your client's position on interim support? Calvin glanced at Jack, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Your Honor, my client is willing to provide reasonable support if paternity is established. However, we believe that Mrs. Rourke Maddox's claim about the timing and circumstances of conception is false, and we're prepared to provide evidence to that effect. Very well. The judge checked her calendar. Given the sensitive nature of these claims, I'm going to recess for 30 minutes. When we reconvene, both parties will present their evidence regarding the alleged reconciliation. We'll proceed from there. She banged her gavel once. Court is in recess. As people began to file out, Jack remained seated, his eyes forward. He could feel Delaney's gaze burning into him from across the room. You're handling this well, Calvin murmured, arranging his papers. Most men would be on their feet, shouting by now. That's what she's counting on, Jack replied quietly. She wants me to lose control, to look guilty or defensive. Jace leaned forward from the row behind. She doesn't know you as well as she thinks she does. Outside in the hallway, Jack caught sight of Delaney huddled with Marla near the water fountain. Their voices were low but intense. Jack positioned himself near a bench where he could overhear without being obvious about it. This is insane, Delaware. Marla's face was tight with tension. You're playing with fire. It's going to work? Delaney hissed back. He won't risk going public with how cold he really is. This town still thinks he's some damn saint. He'll settle. And if he doesn't, he will. Delaney's voice hardened. He has to. I'm out of options, Marla. The credit cards are maxed. Mom's threatening to sell the condo if I don't start making payments. This is my only way out. What about Wyatt? Does he know you're doing this? Delaney's laugh was bitter. Wyatt ghosted me the minute I told him I was keeping it. He wanted nothing to do with a baby. Said his business was just taking off, couldn't afford the distraction. So Jack is your backup plan. Jack is my ticket to stability. He owes me that much after 8 years. Marla shook her head. This isn't right, Delaware. Using a baby like this. Using. Delaney's voice rose slightly before she controlled it. I'm securing my child's future. Jack's business is worth something. With alimony and child support, I can start over. Get back on my feet. There are other ways. Name one. Delaney's eyes flashed. One way I can keep my home, pay off my debts, and provide for this baby without crawling back to my parents or working 3 jobs. Just one. Marla had no answer. Jack drifted away from the conversation, having heard enough. So it was as he suspected. Delaney was using the pregnancy, a real pregnancy, but not his to leverage more money from the divorce. She was desperate, in debt, and the baby's actual father had abandoned her. In another time, he might have felt pity. Now, he felt only a cold certainty that justice was about to be served. Back in the courtroom, Judge Gaines called for silence as she retook the bench. We'll begin with the petitioner. Mrs. Rourke Maddox, when exactly do you claim this reconciliation occurred? Delaney stood, one hand supporting her back in the posture of a woman carrying a precious burden. January 12th, Your Honor. In the evening. And where did this occur? At the house we shared. Jack came by to pick up some tools he'd left in the garage. We started talking about old times and... She lowered her eyes. One thing led to another. Mr. Maddox? Your response. Jack stood, his voice steady. That's not true, Your Honor. On January 12th, I was working in my shop all night on a rush order for a client. I never went to the house. Can you prove your whereabouts on that date? Jack nodded. Yes, Your Honor. My workshop has security cameras that record to a cloud server. I have footage showing me at the shop from 7 p.m. on January 12th until 6 a.m. the following morning. Delaney's confident expression faltered slightly. Miranda whispered something to her, and she nodded, composing herself. Additionally, Jack continued, I have time-stamped order records showing I was working on a custom dining set for the Harrison family that night, with delivery scheduled for January 14th. The Harrisons can confirm they picked up their completed order on that date. Judge Gaines nodded. Mr. Reese, please provide this evidence to the court. Calvin handed a flash drive to the bailiff. The security footage is on this drive, Your Honor, along with PDFs of the order records and emails confirming delivery. As the court clerk set up a laptop to review the footage, Miranda Phelps rose. Your Honor, even if Mr. Maddox was at his workshop that evening, Mrs. Rourke Maddox could have visited him there. The existence of security footage doesn't disprove their encounter. Is that what happened, Mrs. Rourke Maddox? The judge asked. Did you visit Mr. Maddox at his workshop? Delaney hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the question. Yes. That's what I meant. I went to see him at the workshop, not the house. Jack didn't react to the obvious lie. He'd expected this Delaney's ability to adapt her story when cornered was one of her most consistent traits. Your Honor, Calvin said, the security footage shows no visitors to the workshop that evening. Mr. Maddox was alone the entire time. Let's view the footage, Judge Gaines said firmly. The screen came to life, showing the interior of Jack's workshop. The timestamp in the corner read 7:02 p.m., January 12th. Jack was visible, working steadily on a large table. The footage advanced at high speed, showing him continuing to work without interruption. No one entered. No one left. Just Jack, alone with his craft. Hour after hour, Delaney's face had gone pale. Miranda was furiously scribbling notes, whispering urgently to her client. This appears quite conclusive, Judge Gaines said when the footage ended. Mrs. Rourke Maddox, do you have any explanation for this discrepancy in your testimony? Before Delaney could answer, Jack spoke. Your Honor, if I may, there's one more piece of evidence I'd like to submit. Proceed. Jack nodded to Calvin, who produced a small digital recorder. This is a voicemail left by Mrs. Rourke Maddox for her friend, Marla Ayers, on February 28th of this year. Ms. Ayers provided this recording voluntarily. In the gallery, Marla sat rigid, her face a mask of tension. Delaney whipped around to stare at her, betrayal and fury in her eyes. Calvin pressed play. Delaney's voice filled the courtroom. Marla, it's me. Listen, don't tell anyone yet, but I've got a plan. If I can tie this kid to Jack, I can live for free the next 18 years. He's so principled he'll never abandon his own child, even if he hates me. Call me back when you get this. I need your help with some dates. The color drained from Delaney's face. Her hand gripped the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Miranda's expression was thunderous as she leaned in to whisper urgently to her client. Jack's face remained impassive, but inside, a weight he'd been carrying for months began to lift. The truth was finally coming to light. Judge Gaines's jaw tightened as she regarded Delaney. Mrs. Rourke Maddox, do you acknowledge that this is your voice on the recording? Delaney's mouth opened and closed several times before she found her voice. That's not. It's taken out of context, Your Honor. What context would explain that statement, Mrs. Rourke Maddox? The judge's voice was like ice. Miranda Phelps stood quickly. Your Honor, we request a brief recess to confer. Denied. Judge Gaines's gaze was piercing. Mrs. Rourke Maddox, I will ask you one more time. Is that your voice on the recording? And were you attempting to fraudulently claim Mr. Maddox as the father of your child? Delaney's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks, real ones this time. Your Honor, you don't understand. I'm all alone. He left me with nothing. The baby's father wants nothing to do with us. What was I supposed to do? Not commit perjury in my courtroom, for starters, Judge Gaines said sharply. She turned to Jack. Mr. Maddox, did you have any knowledge of this pregnancy before today's hearing? Jack hesitated, then decided on honesty. I had suspicions, Your Honor. Rumors travel fast in small towns. But I had no confirmation until today. From the row behind him, Jack heard Jace's quiet fist pump and muttered yes. He didn't turn around, keeping his focus on the judge. Judge Gaines made several notes, then looked up at the assembled parties. In light of the evidence presented, I find Mrs. Rourke Maddox's testimony regarding reconciliation to be false. Furthermore, her admitted attempt to defraud both Mr. Maddox and this court is extremely troubling. She fixed Delaney with a stern gaze. This behavior will significantly impact my rulings on the financial aspects of this divorce. Delaney collapsed into her chair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Miranda looked as though she'd swallowed something bitter, her lips pressed into a thin line. We will recess for 1 hour, Judge Gaines announced. When we return, I will issue my ruling on all outstanding matters in this divorce. Given what has transpired today, I see no reason to delay resolution any further. She banged her gavel. Court is in recess. As people began to file out, Jack remained seated, his hands folded on the table before him. He felt neither triumph nor vindication, just a quiet certainty that justice was finally being served in the courthouse hallway. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jack stood with Calvin and Jace near a window, reviewing their next steps in low voices. Across the hall, Delaney sat alone on a bench, her makeup streaked from tears, her earlier radiance dimmed to desperation. Miranda Phelps had disappeared, presumably to prepare for damage control. No one approached Delaney, not even Marla, who hovered uncertainly near the water fountain, her expression a mix of guilt and resolve. What do you think the judge will decide? Jack asked Calvin. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. After what just happened, you'll get the business free and clear. No alimony given the fraud attempt. Maybe a small property settlement to finalize things, but nothing significant. Good enough for me. Jack's voice was flat. I just want this over with. Jace clapped him on the shoulder. Almost there, buddy. Just 1 more hour. Across the hall, Marla finally gathered her courage and approached Delaney. Jack couldn't hear their conversation, but the body language told the story. Marla's tentative approach, Delaney's rigid posture, the way she refused to make eye contact. Then Delaney's voice raised enough to carry. You're supposed to be my friend. How could you give him that recording? Because this has gone too far, Delaware. Marla's reply was softer, but still audible. You're lying under oath. You could go to jail. So you betray me? After everything we've been through? Delaney's face contorted with fury. What kind of friend does that? The kind who's tired of cleaning up your messes. Marla straightened, finding her resolve. The kind who warned you for weeks that this plan was insane. Go to hell. Delaney turned away, her arms wrapped around her middle. Marla stood for a moment longer, then walked away, her shoulders slumped. As she passed near Jack, their eyes met briefly. She gave a small nod acknowledgement, perhaps, or apology, then continued down the hall and out of sight. Jack turned back to his conversation with Calvin, but his attention was caught by a new arrival. Wyatt Calder strode into the courthouse, his gym-toned physique evident even under his suit. His handsome face was set in lines of anger as he scanned the hallway, finally spotting Delaney. There she is, Jack murmured. Jace followed his gaze. That him? The actual baby daddy? Looks like it. Jack watched as Wyatt approached Delaney, his body language screaming confrontation. You told her to give that recording to Maddox. Wyatt's voice carried clearly, each word clipped with anger. What the hell were you thinking, Delaney? She looked up at him, bewilderment replacing her despair. What? I didn't tell anyone anything. Marla betrayed me. Marla called me 20 minutes ago, Wyatt snapped. Said you told her to give me up if things went south for you in court. Said it was your insurance policy. That's not true. Delaney struggled to her feet, one hand supporting her belly. I never said that. Why would I implicate you? That makes no sense. Then why is my name suddenly all over this? Wyatt demanded. I've got clients texting me, asking if I'm the father of your baby. My girlfriend is blowing up my phone. My reputation, your reputation. Delaney's laugh was bitter. What about me? I just humiliated myself in front of a judge. I could lose everything. That's not my problem. Wyatt's voice lowered to a hiss. I told you from the beginning. I want nothing to do with this. My business is just taking off. I can't afford a scandal. It's your child, Wyatt, Delaney said, her voice breaking. Doesn't that mean anything to you? You can't prove that. His face hardened. And if you try, I'll deny it. It'll be your word against mine. And after what just happened in that courtroom, who do you think people will believe? Delaney's face crumpled. You said you loved me. I said a lot of things. Wyatt stepped back. Stay away from me, Delaware. I mean it. This isn't my mess to fix. He turned and strode away, not looking back as Delaney sank on a bench, her body shaking with silent sobs. Jack turned away from the scene, feeling an unexpected twinge of, not pity, exactly. Recognition, perhaps, of the Delaney he'd first met, vulnerable, human, capable of real pain beneath the manipulation. That was ugly, Jace murmured. She made her choices, Jack replied, but there was no satisfaction in his voice. Calvin cleared his throat. We should head back in. The judge will be returning soon. As they walked back to the courtroom, Jack found himself thinking about the child, an innocent caught in the middle of adult mistakes and manipulations. It wasn't his responsibility, but still, he pushed the thought away. One thing at a time. First, he needed to finally end this chapter of his life. Then he could decide what, if anything, he owed to the others involved. Courtroom C felt smaller when they returned, the air heavier with anticipation. Jack took his seat beside Calvin, his exterior calm belying the storm of emotions beneath. Across the aisle, Delaney sat alone. Miranda Phelps had not returned. Where's her lawyer? Jack murmured to Calvin. Withdrew, most likely. Calvin arranged his papers methodically. Attorneys don't appreciate being blindsided by their own clients, especially not with something that borders on criminal. The bailiff called for all to rise as Judge Gaines returned. Her expression gave nothing away as she took her seat and surveyed the room. Be seated, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. I see that counsel for the petitioner is absent. Mrs. Rourke Maddox, where's Ms. Phelps? Delaney rose unsteadily. She had to recuse herself, Your Honor. She said she could no longer represent me effectively. I see. Judge Gaines made a note. Do you wish to request a continuance to secure new counsel? Hope flashed across Delaney's face. Yes, Your Honor. I would like. Request denied. The judge's tone was firm, but not unkind. Given the circumstances revealed today, including your admitted attempt to commit fraud upon this court, I see no basis for further delay. We will proceed to judgment. Delaney sank back in her chair, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Judge Gaines adjusted her glasses. Having reviewed the evidence presented in this case, including the revelations of today's hearing, I am prepared to rule on all outstanding matters. She fixed Delaney with a stern gaze. Mrs. Rourke-Maddox, your actions today demonstrate a troubling disregard for the integrity of these proceedings. You have knowingly presented false testimony in an attempt to secure financial advantages to which you are not entitled. Delaney's head lowered, her hair falling forward to shield her face. Regarding the division of assets, the judge continued, the court finds as follows. First, the business known as Maddox Custom Furniture is awarded solely to the respondent, Jack Maddox. The evidence clearly establishes this as a family business predating the marriage, and the petitioner's claim to a portion of its value was based on fraudulent assertions. Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The business his father's legacy would remain intact. Second, regarding spousal support. Given the petitioner's conduct, including documented financial impropriety during the marriage and attempted fraud during these proceedings, the court denies the request for alimony. A small gasp escaped Delaney. Her shoulders began to shake. Third, regarding division of marital property. The residence at 215 Lakeside Drive shall be sold, with proceeds divided equally after satisfaction of the existing mortgage. Personal property has already been distributed by agreement and requires no further order. Judge Gaines paused, her gaze moving between Jack and Delaney. I wish to address one final matter. Mrs. Rourke-Maddox, your attempt to falsely establish paternity is not only morally reprehensible, but borders on criminal misconduct. Were Mr. Maddox inclined to press charges for attempted fraud, he would have grounds to do so. Delaney looked up, panic in her eyes. Jack met her gaze steadily, his expression unreadable. Mr. Maddox, do you wish to pursue such charges? The judge asked. All eyes turned to Jack. This was the moment, his opportunity for the final blow, to truly ruin the woman who had tried to destroy his life and legacy. No, Your Honor, he said quietly. I just want this to be over. Relief flooded Delaney's face, followed quickly by confusion, as if she couldn't understand why he wouldn't take the opportunity to hurt her more. Judge Gaines nodded. Very well. The divorce is granted on grounds of irreconcilable differences. The marriage between Jack Maddox and Delaney Rourke-Maddox is hereby dissolved. Mrs. Rourke-Maddox may resume use of her maiden name at her discretion. She signed the order with a firm hand. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell with a crack of finality. It was done. Jack sat motionless as the reality washed over him. Free. After nearly a year of fighting, of sleepless nights, and constant anxiety, it was finally over. The business was secure. His future was his own again. Calvin offered his hand. Congratulations, Jack. You got what you wanted. Jack shook it, feeling oddly hollow. Thanks for everything, Calvin. As people began to file out, Jack gathered his papers, deliberately taking his time. He didn't want to risk encountering Delaney in the hallway, not now, when the wounds were still so fresh. Jace approached, clapping him on the shoulder. It's over, man. You won. Yeah. Jack managed a small smile. I guess I did. Drinks tonight? To celebrate. Jack thought about it, then nodded. Sure, but not at Miller's. Miller's was where he and Delaney had had their first date. Gotcha. Jace understood without further explanation. Ruby's at 8. I'll be there. As Jace left, Jack turned to find Delaney standing nearby, her eyes red-rimmed, her hands clutching her purse like a lifeline. Jack, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Can we talk? Just for a minute. Every instinct told him to walk away, to not give her another opportunity to manipulate or hurt him. But something in her expression, a genuine desperation he'd rarely seen, made him pause. 1 minute, he said, his voice neutral. Thank you. She swallowed hard. For not pressing charges. You could have, and we both know it. Jack said nothing, waiting. I never meant for things to get this bad. She continued, the words tumbling out. When we first got married, I really did love you. I thought we wanted the same things. We did, Jack said quietly, until you decided they weren't enough. Delaney looked down, one hand reflexively moving to her stomach. I messed up everything, and now I don't know what I'm going to do. Her voice broke. No job, no money, no home. Even my friends are gone. For a moment, just a moment, Jack felt the pull of the man he'd once been. The man who would have tried to fix this, to take care of her despite everything. But that man was gone, worn away by 1,000 small betrayals. That's not my problem anymore, Delaney. His voice was gentle but firm. You made your choices. Now you live with them. Just like that. 8 years, and you could just walk away. You walked away long before I did, Jack said. You just never had the honesty to admit it. She flinched as if struck. So that's it? You won, I lost, game over. It was never a game to me. Jack picked up his briefcase. Goodbye, Delaney. I wish you well. He turned and walked away, not looking back. His minute was up. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of activity. Jack threw himself into his work with renewed energy, completing back-ordered pieces and taking on new commissions. With the legal battles behind him, he found himself sleeping better, eating regularly again. The constant tension that had knotted his shoulders for months began to ease. News traveled fast in Greenville. The story of the divorce hearing of Delaney's shocking claim and Jack's methodical dismantling of it spread through town like wildfire. Jack heard the whispers when he went to the hardware store, felt the sympathetic glances when he stopped for coffee. Heard what happened in court. Tom Miller said one morning as he handed Jack his usual black coffee. That's rough, man. Jack just nodded, not wanting to discuss it. But Tom pressed on. She really tried to pin another man's baby on you? That's cold. It's over now, Jack said, hoping to end the conversation. Yeah, well, you're better off. Word is Wyatt Calder's denying the kid is his too, telling everyone who'll listen that Delaney's a liar who can't be trusted. Jack's hand tightened around his coffee cup. That's so. Yep, poor kid's gonna be born with nobody willing to claim it. Tom shook his head. Not the child's fault, its mother is. He stopped, seeming to realize he'd gone too far. Anyway, your usual table's open. Jack took his coffee and sat by the window, gazing out the town square. The weight of Tom's words settled uncomfortably in his chest. Not the child's fault. No, it wasn't. And yet the child would bear the consequences of its parents' actions, just as he had borne the consequences of Delaney's betrayal. His thoughts were interrupted by a text from Jace, heard back from the regional magazine. They want to do the story. Craftsman wins in courtroom showdown. You good with that? Jack frowned. The publicity would be good for business, but the idea of his personal life being splashed across a magazine didn't sit well. Pass. Don't want to rehash the whole thing. Jace's reply came quickly. Figured. Already told him no. Just checking. Finishing his coffee, Jack headed to his workshop. The familiar sense of wood and varnish welcomed him home. This was where he belonged, creating things that would last. Things with integrity in every joint and curve. The oak table he'd been working on the day of the hearing was nearly complete. Jack ran his hand along the edge, feeling the smooth finish beneath his fingertips. Good work. Honest work. His phone rang. Tess. Morning, Mom. Morning, son. Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a few days. Been busy with orders. Good busy or avoiding the world busy. Jack smiled despite himself. His mother never did mince words. Good busy. Things are picking up since everything's settled. I'm glad. Tess paused. Have you heard about Delaney? Jack's smile faded. No, and I'm not sure I want to. She's moved back in with her parents. Outside of Raleigh. Something like relief washed over him. Delaney gone from Greenville meant one less complication, one less chance of painful encounters. How'd you hear that? Marla told me. She stopped by the house yesterday. Wanted to apologize for her part in everything. She didn't owe you an apology. No, but she needed to give one. Tess's voice softened. She's carrying a lot of guilt, Jack. Says she should have told you what was happening sooner. Jack sighed. She did what she could. In the end, she came through. That's what I told her. Tess was quiet for a moment. She also said Wyatt Calder's been telling everyone the baby isn't his. Yeah, I heard. Marla says it is. Says Delaney has texts to prove it, but Wyatt threatened to sue for defamation if she makes them public. Jack's jaw tightened. Wyatt had always been a coward beneath the charm and muscles. That's between them. I know. Tess sighed. Just thought you should know. In case you run into Wyatt at the gym or something. I switched gyms months ago. Smart boy. Pride colored her voice. Your father would have been proud, you know, of how you handled all this. Jack swallowed against a sudden tightness in his throat. I don't want pride. I want peace. But I'll fight to keep it. That's my son. Tessa's voice was warm. Coming for dinner Sunday. Wouldn't miss it. After hanging up, Jack returned to the table, his mind churning with thoughts of Delaney, Wyatt, and the innocent child caught between them. None of it was his responsibility. He'd been clear about that in court, and he'd meant it. And yet, he pushed the thoughts away. He had work to do. Summer arrived with a vengeance, bringing humid heat that made the workshop nearly unbearable by midday. Jack adjusted his schedule, starting at dawn and finishing when the temperature became too much. Business was booming. He had orders backed up for 3 months and was considering hiring an apprentice to help with the simpler pieces. The Thompson account had returned, with an apology for getting caught up in gossip. Jack had accepted the work, but kept things strictly professional. Some bridges, once damaged, were never quite the same point. One Tuesday morning, Jack was sketching designs for a custom headboard when the workshop door opened. He looked up to see Tess enter, carrying a wicker basket. Lunch, she announced, setting it on his desk. Since I know you won't stop to eat otherwise. Thanks, Mom. Jack set aside his pencil and opened the basket. Inside were sandwiches, fruit, and a thermos of iced tea. You didn't have to do this. I know that. Tess sat on a stool, watching as he unwrapped a sandwich. Just wanted to see how you're doing. Really doing. Jack took a bite, considering the question. Good, I think. Busy. The Carter order led to 3 more referrals. I meant personally, not professionally. Tess fixed him with her nurse's gaze, the one that had intimidated a generation of patients and hospital administrators alike. Jack sighed. I'm fine, Mom. Really? Are you sleeping? Yes. Eating regularly. When I remember seeing anyone. Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp. Jack nearly choked on his sandwich. What? No. It's only been 3 months since the divorce was final. Just checking. Tess sipped from the thermos. Life goes on, Jack, even after betrayal. He set down the sandwich, appetite fading. I know that. I'm just not interested in jumping back into all that. All what? Human connection? Love? The messy, complicated business of sharing your life with someone. Exactly. Jack's voice was firm. I tried that. Look how it turned out. Tess studied him for a long moment. Do you know why your father never remarried after your mother died? The question caught Jack off guard. His father had raised him alone from the age of 8, after Jack's mother succumbed to cancer. The subject of dating had never come up. I assumed he was still in love with her. He was. Tess nodded. But that wasn't why he stayed single. He was afraid. Dad wasn't afraid of anything. Tessa's smile was sad. We're all afraid of something, Jack. Your father was afraid of risking his heart again, of opening up to that kind of pain a second time. She leaned forward. And do you know what he told me? Right before he died? Jack shook his head, throat tight. He said his biggest regret was letting fear make that decision for him. That he'd wasted years he could have spent loving again. This is different, Jack protested. Delaney didn't die. She betrayed me. Repeatedly. Yes, she did, Tess agreed. And that's her burden to carry, not yours. Your burden is deciding what to do with the lesson she taught you. She reached across the desk to take his hand. Will you learn to be more careful, more discerning? Or will you learn that love isn't worth the risk? Jack had no answer. The question settled into his chest like a stone. Tess squeezed his hand once, then changed the subject. The garden club wants to commission a bench for the town square. Memorial for old Mrs. Hadley. Thought you might be interested. He recognized the gift. She was giving him space to consider her words without pressure. Send them my way. I've got some ideas that might work. They finished lunch talking of safer things town gossip, the heat wave, Tessa's upcoming book club meeting. As she prepared to leave, Jack walked her to her car. Thanks for lunch, he said, and for the advice. You don't have to thank me for either. She reached up to pat his cheek. Just think about what I said. Your father was a good man, but even good men make mistakes. After she left, Jack returned to the workshop, but his concentration was broken. He found himself thinking about his father, the quiet strength he'd admired, but also the loneliness he'd sensed but never fully understood as a child. Had his father really regretted not opening his heart again? Or was that Tessa's interpretation, her way of nudging Jack back toward the world of the living? Either way, she'd given him something to consider. That evening, as Jack was closing up the workshop, his phone chimed with an email notification. The sender's name made his heart stutter, Delaney Rourke. His first instinct was to delete it unread. What more could she possibly have to say? But curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, made him open it. Jack, I know you probably never want to hear from me again, and I wouldn't blame you. What I did was unforgivable. I lied, I manipulated, I tried to use a child as leverage. There's no excuse for any of it. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I know that's not possible. I'm writing because I owe you an apology, a real one. Not the self-serving kind I gave in court that I'm sorry, Jack. For everything. For the person I became during our marriage. For the ways I hurt you. For trying to take what wasn't mine. You were a good husband. You worked hard. You were faithful. You built something real with your hands. I couldn't see the value in that because I was too busy wanting things that didn't matter that I'm back home with my parents now. The baby is due in 2 months. It's a girl. I'm trying to figure out how to be a mother when I've made such a mess of everything else. I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I lost. Not the money or the status or any of the things I thought were important, but the chance to build a life with someone of integrity. Be well, Jack. You deserve that. Delaney. Jack read the email twice, searching for the manipulation, the hidden agenda. But for once, Delaney's words seemed genuine. Perhaps hitting rock bottom had finally stripped away her artifice. He closed the email without replying. What was there to say? Apology accepted? It wasn't, not really. Some betrayals cut too deep for simple forgiveness. I hope your daughter has a better life. That went without saying, and silence was the only appropriate response. Their chapter was closed. Whatever happened in Delaney's new one was her responsibility, not his. And yet, as he drove home under a sky turning from blue to purple, Jack found himself thinking not of Delaney, but of the unnamed child. A little girl who would enter the world surrounded by complications not of her making. Would she have Delaney's honey blonde hair? Her easy laugh from the early years? Or would she take after Wyatt with his strong jawline and athletic build? It wasn't his concern. He reminded himself of that fact as he made dinner, as he sat on the porch watching fireflies dance across the yard, as he prepared for bed. Not his concern. Not his responsibility. The thought followed him in his sleep, where he dreamed of a small hand reaching for his own. 2 weeks later, Jack received a letter in the mail. The return address was Delaney's parents' home in Raleigh. Unlike the email, this was harder to ignore, a physical thing demanding attention. He set it aside as he prepared for his day, deliberately focusing on other things. There was wood to select for the Hadley Memorial Bench. The Carter family had commissioned a custom crib for their first grandchild. The Thompson order needed final approval, but the letter sat on his kitchen counter like a living thing, drawing his eye whenever he passed. Finally, as evening settled over the workshop, Jack took the letter outside to the fire pit behind the building. He'd use it countless times to burn scraps and sawdust. Tonight, it would serve a different purpose. The letter was 2 pages, written in Delaney's flowing script. Jack didn't open it. Didn't need to. Whatever pleas or explanations or requests it contained wouldn't change anything. Couldn't change anything. He touched a match to one corner and watched as the flame caught, consuming Delaney's words unread. The paper curled and blackened, then collapsed into ash. Jack felt nothing as he watched it burn. No anger, no satisfaction, no regret. Just a quiet certainty that he'd made the right choice. The past was gone. All that remained was to build the future, one careful piece at a time. Back in the workshop, Jack turned his attention to the oak table, the same one he'd been working on when Jace had visited nearly 6 months ago, the day he'd learned of Delaney's court delay. The piece had been set aside during the chaos of a divorce, but now it was time to complete it. The surface was sanded to glassy smoothness, ready for its final coat of finish. But before applying it, Jack turned the massive table over, exposing its underside. Taking up his carving tools, he began to work, the familiar rhythm of mallet and chisel soothing his mind. Chips of oak fell away as the letters took shape beneath his hands. Point two words, simple but profound. Peace earned. When he finished, Jack ran his fingers over the carving, feeling each letter. It wasn't visible from above, a secret message known only to him and anyone who bothered to look deeper. A reminder of what he'd fought for and won. The workshop was quiet save for the gentle swish of the brush as he applied the finish to the tabletop. Tomorrow, he would deliver it to its new owners. Another piece of himself sent out into the world, built to outlast the hands that made its darkness fell. Jack set a single chair at the head of the table. He sat for a moment, hands resting on the smooth oak, feeling the solidity beneath his palms. Then he rose, turned off the lights, and locked the workshop behind him. Outside, Jace waited on his motorcycle, engine idling. Ready, Jace called over the rumble. Jack nodded, joining his friend. Tess sat in her car nearby, window down, a knowing smile on her face. Where to? Jack asked as he climbed onto the back of the motorcycle. Wherever you want, Jace replied. The night's young. Jack glanced back at the workshop, at the life he'd defended and rebuilt. Then he looked forward to the road ahead and whatever waited beyond the curve. Let's go, he said, not looking back.